In a quiet corner of the world, where mountains stretched endlessly and rivers ran dry most of the year, there was a small village. It wasn't marked on any map, nor did it have electricity or paved roads. Life here moved slowly, like sand, slipping through fingers, and people worked hard just to survive. Among them lived a boy named Arjun. He was 12 years old but looked much younger because hunger had left its mark on his thin frame. His clothes were patched together from scraps, his shoes worn out with holes that let in mud when it rained. Despite all this, Arjun carried himself with an air of quiet determination. He didn't complain. He simply did what needed to be done. Every morning as the sun peeked over the hills, Arjun would rise before anyone else in the village. He'd gather firewood from the nearby forest, fetch water from the stream, and help his elderly neighbor carry heavy sacks of grain. In return, she sometimes gave him stale bread or a handful of rice. These small acts of kindness kept him alive, though barely. Most days he ate only one meal, if he was lucky. Nights were cold, and sleep came fitfully, on the hard floor of his tiny shack. But Arjun never lost hope. Deep down, he believed that someday, somehow things would change. One day, while searching for food deeper in the forest than usual, something unusual caught Arjun's eye. Beneath a cluster of thick bushes, he saw movement, or rather, stillness, so unnatural that it drew him closer. Pushing aside branches carefully, he discovered a man lying unconscious on the ground. At first glance, the man seemed ordinary enough except for his strange clothing. The fabric shimmered faintly, unlike anything Arjun had ever seen. Around him lay peculiar objects, devices blinking softly, emitting faint hums even though they appeared damaged. Arjun froze, unsure of what to do. Should he run back to the village and tell someone? Or should he investigate further? Curiosity won out. Slowly, cautiously, he approached the mysterious figure. As he got closer, he noticed the man's chest rising and falling weakly. He was alive, but barely. Without thinking twice, Arjun decided to act. He couldn't leave the stranger here to die. Though he was small and frail himself, he mustered all his strength and began dragging the man toward his shack. It was exhausting. Work. The man was heavier than he looked, and the uneven terrain made every step difficult. By the time Arjun reached home, sweat poured down his face, and his arms trembled from exertion. Still, he refused to give up. Once inside, Arjun laid the man gently on a makeshift bed of straw and blankets. Then, using whatever supplies he could scrounge, a torn piece of cloth soaked in water, some dried herbs he remembered his grandmother once used, he tended to the stranger's wounds. For 3 long days, Arjun stayed by his side, feeding him sips of water and bits of leftover food whenever he stirred. Slowly, the man regained consciousness. When the stranger finally opened, his eyes' confusion clouded his expression. He blinked several times, trying to focus on the boy kneeling beside him. "Where am I?" he croaked, his voice hoarse. "You're safe," Arjun replied softly. "I found you in the forest." The man stared at him for a moment, then nodded weakly. "Thank you," he murmured. Over the next few hours, as his strength returned, he introduced himself. "My name is Kale," he said, "and I owe you my life." Kale was hesitant to share too much at first, but as the days passed, he grew more comfortable around Arjun. He spoke about distant places where stars burned brighter and machines thought like humans. He described worlds beyond Earth, civilizations, far older and wiser than humanity's own. To Arjun, these stories sounded like fairy tales, yet there was a ring of truth to Kale's words. Something about the way he spoke, calm, measured, and filled with wonder, made Arjun believe him. Despite his gratitude, Kale often seemed troubled. One evening, as they sat outside watching the sunset, Kyle's gaze drifted upward to the sky. A shadow fell across his face. "They'll come looking for me soon," he said quietly. "Who?" Arjun asked, his brow furrowing. Kale hesitated, then sighed. "People like me, but not like me. They want power, control. They don't care who gets hurt along the way." He paused, glancing at Arjun. "I came here to escape them, but now His voice trailed off. Though Arjun didn't fully understand the danger, he felt a chill run down his spine. Whatever Kyle was running from, it was clear it wasn't good. Yet instead of fear, Arjun felt resolve. If Kyle trusted him enough to stay, then he would stand by him no matter what. Over the following weeks, their bond deepened. Kyle began teaching Arjun things he'd never imagined possible. Mathematics that explained the movements of planets, languages spoken by beings light years away, and stories of civilizations whose technology rivaled magic. To Arjun, these lessons opened doors to worlds he'd never dreamed existed. For the first time in his life, he felt a spark of excitement about the future, but beneath the surface, tension simmered. Kyle frequently scanned the skies, his expression growing darker with each passing day. "They're getting closer," he muttered one night, clutching a strange device in his hand. "We need to prepare." "For what?" Arjun asked, his heart pounding. Kyle turned to face him, his eyes serious. "For war." Unbeknownst to Arjun, their quiet existence was about to be shattered. High above Earth, ships larger than cities hovered silently, their presence unnoticed by the billions below. These weren't explorers seeking knowledge or friendship. They were conquerors, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And when they did, Arjun's courage and Kyle's wisdom would be put to the ultimate test. For now, however, the boy and the stranger remained hidden, two unlikely companions bound by fate. Little did they know their actions would soon alter the course of history, not just for themselves, but for the entire planet. As days turned into weeks, Arjun and Kyle settled into a routine. Each morning, Arjun would go to the forest or nearby fields to gather food, while Kyle worked tirelessly on repairing the strange devices he had salvaged from his crash landing. The boy often watched in awe as Kyle tinkered with glowing panels and wires that hummed faintly, creating patterns of light that seemed almost alive. Though Arjun didn't understand most of what Kyle was doing, he could see the concentration etched on the man's face. It was clear this wasn't just about fixing broken gadgets. It was about survival. Kyle continued teaching Arjun during their downtime. He explained how stars were born in colossal explosions called supernovas, how planets formed from swirling clouds of dust, and how entire civilizations thrived on worlds so distant they couldn't even be seen from Earth. To Arjun, these lessons felt like magic. They opened up a universe far grander than anything he'd ever imagined. For the first time in his life, he began to dream, not of escaping poverty, but of exploring the stars themselves. But not everything Kyle shared was filled with wonder. Some nights, when the air grew cool and the sky darkened, Kyle spoke of darker truths, of wars fought among the stars, of empires built on conquest, and of those who sought power at any cost. "Not everyone out there is kind," Kyle warned one evening. "Some will destroy without hesitation if it serves their purpose." Arjun listened intently, though he struggled to grasp the enormity of what Kyle described. How could beings capable of traveling across galaxies also be so cruel? Still, he trusted Kyle implicitly. If the man said danger loomed ahead, then Arjun believed him. One fateful night, Kyle's fears became reality. As they sat outside their makeshift home, gazing at the endless expanse above, the sky suddenly shimmered unnaturally. A patch of stars dimmed, as though blotted out by an invisible hand. Kyle shot to his feet, his expression grim. "They've found me," he whispered. "Who?" Arjun asked, his heart racing. Kyle hesitated before answering. "A faction known as the Dominion. They're ruthless. They believe strength is the only measure of worth. They hunt down anyone who opposes them, including me." Arjun stared at him wide-eyed. "Why are they after you?" "Because I know too much," Kyle replied quietly. "I've seen their plans, their secrets, and now, because of me, they'll target Earth." The weight of Kyle's words hit Arjun like a punch to the chest. Earth, his home? The thought of his village, and all the people he knew, being destroyed by forces beyond comprehension terrified him. But instead of panic, determination took hold. "What can we do?" he asked firmly. Kyle sighed, running a hand through his hair. We need help. There's another group, the Galactic Concordance. They protect weaker species from exploitation. If I can contact them, maybe they can stop the Dominion before it's too late. It sounded simple enough, but Kale quickly explained the challenges. His communication device was damaged, its power source depleted. Without it, reaching the Concordance would be impossible. Even if they managed to fix it, there was no guarantee the message would get through in time. The Dominion's fleet was already orbiting Earth, hidden from human eyes, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Despite the odds, Arjun refused to give up. Then let's fix it, he said confidently. Together. Kale smiled faintly, touched by the boy's courage. All right, he agreed, but it won't be easy. From that day forward, their lives revolved around one goal: repairing the communication device. Kyle guided Arjun step by step, explaining how each component worked and what needed to be done. Arjun absorbed every word, determined to prove himself useful. When Kyle needed rare materials, Arjun ventured into nearby towns, scavenging junkyards and abandoned buildings for scraps of metal, wires, and batteries. It was dangerous work. Adults often chased him away, accusing him of theft. But Arjun pressed on, knowing the stakes were too high to quit. Weeks passed and progress came slowly. Every success brought hope, every failure frustration. One particularly grueling afternoon, after hours of unsuccessful attempts, Arjun slumped against the wall, exhausted. What if we fail? He muttered, staring at the ground. Kale placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. Failure isn't an option, he said firmly. Not when so much depends on us. Inspired by Kale's resolve, Arjun pushed aside his doubts and returned to work. Finally, after countless trials and errors, the device hummed to life. Its screen flickered, displaying symbols that danced across its surface. Kyle activated the transmission, sending out a signal encoded in frequencies only understood by allies among the stars. Then came the hardest part: waiting. Hours stretched into days, and still there was no response. Doubt crept in. Had their message reached anyone? Was Earth doomed? On the third night, just as despair threatened to overwhelm them, the sky erupted in light. Not one, but dozens of massive ships descended silently, casting shadows over the landscape. Panic swept through the villagers below, who scrambled to hide or flee. But Kale remained calm, turning to Arjun with a relieved smile. They're here, he said. A holographic figure appeared before them, a tall, elegant being with luminous blue skin and eyes that glowed softly. Through translation software, Arjun learned they were representatives of the Galactic Concordance. Their leader addressed Kale directly, thanking him for exposing the Dominion's plans and pledging immediate action to neutralize the threat. Relief washed over both Kale and Arjun. For the first time in weeks, they allowed themselves to breathe freely. Yet even as gratitude filled their hearts, new challenges arose. The Concordance needed proof of the Dominion's intent to invade Earth, a task requiring someone brave enough to infiltrate their ranks. Kale immediately volunteered, but Arjun shook his head. You're not going alone, he declared. I'm coming with you. Kyle protested, arguing that it was too dangerous for a child. But Arjun stood his ground, his voice unwavering. You saved my life by trusting me. Now it's my turn to return the favor. Moved by the boy's loyalty, Kyle relented. Together they prepared for the mission ahead, knowing full well the risks involved. As they packed supplies and reviewed plans, Arjun couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and fear. He was leaving behind everything he'd ever known, all for the chance to protect it. The night before their departure, Arjun lay awake, staring at the ceiling. His mind raced with questions. What awaited them aboard the Dominion's ships? Would they succeed in gathering the evidence needed? And most importantly, would they make it back alive? Beside him, Kale slept fitfully, burdened by the same uncertainties. Yet despite their fears, both held on to one truth: they had each other. Whatever lay ahead, They would face it together. At dawn, they set off toward the edge of the village where the Concordance had left a small shuttle disguised as an ordinary rock formation. As they climbed aboard, Arjun glanced back at the hills, the forests and the tiny shack he called home. Tears welled in his eyes, but he blinked them away. This wasn't goodbye. It was the beginning of something greater. With a soft hum, the shuttle lifted off the ground, ascending higher and higher until the world below became a blur of green and brown. Ahead of them stretched the vast unknown, the stars, the galaxies, and the destiny that awaited two unlikely heroes. The shuttle soared through the atmosphere, its sleek design blending seamlessly with the darkness of space. Arjun clutched the edge of his seat tightly, his knuckles white as he stared out the window at the endless expanse of stars. Earth grew, smaller and smaller behind them until it was nothing more than a pale blue dot suspended in the void. For a moment, awe overtook fear. He had never imagined leaving his village, let alone his planet. Yet here he was, hurtling toward a confrontation that could determine humanity's fate. Kale sat beside him, his expression calm but focused. Though he didn't show it, Arjun knew Kale was just as nervous. The weight of their mission hung heavy, in the air, two unlikely allies risking everything to stop an invasion. They had been given disguises by the Galactic Concordance, uniforms resembling those worn by members of the Dominion. These outfits, combined with holographic emitters to alter their appearances, would allow them to blend in among the enemy. Still, even the best disguise wouldn't protect them if they made a single mistake. As the shuttle approached the Dominion fleet, Kyle turned to Arjun. "Listen carefully," he said, his voice steady but urgent. "We'll have one chance to get this right. Stick close to me, follow my lead, and don't speak unless absolutely necessary. If anyone asks who you are, say you're my assistant, got it?" Arjun nodded, swallowing hard. "Got it." Moments later, the shuttle docked aboard one of the massive ships. As the hatch opened, cold metal corridors stretched before them, lined with blinking lights and humming machinery. The air smelled sterile, almost unnatural, and the faint hum of engines vibrated through the floor beneath their feet. Soldiers moved briskly past, their faces hidden behind helmets, their weapons strapped securely to their sides. To Arjun, it felt like stepping into the belly of a beast. One wrong move and they'd be devoured. Kale led the way, his confident stride masking the tension in his body. Arjun followed closely, mimicking his posture and trying to appear as though he belonged. His heart pounded so loudly he feared someone might hear it. Every step deeper into the ship tested his nerve, but he forced himself to keep moving forward. Their destination was the command center, a heavily guarded area where plans for the invasion were being finalized. Getting there undetected required navigating through checkpoints, each more scrutinizing than the last. At one point, a soldier stopped them, demanding identification. Kale handed over a forged ID chip embedded with false credentials provided by the Concordance. The soldier scanned it, his eyes narrowing suspiciously as he studied the data. For what felt like an eternity, Arjun held his breath, certain they'd been caught. But then, the soldier nodded and waved them through. Relief flooded through him, though he dared not let it show. Finally, after what seemed like hours, they reached the command center. The room was vast, filled with rows of monitors displaying maps of Earth marked with invasion routes. Officers barked orders, technicians typed furiously on glowing keyboards, and holographic projections floated above tables detailing strategies for conquest. It was chaos, but organized chaos. Hiding behind a console near the back of the room, Kyle pulled out a small device disguised as a datapad. He activated it, beginning to record everything happening around them. Arjun kept watch, scanning the room for any sign of trouble. So far, no one seemed to notice them, but as the minutes ticked by, anxiety gnawed at him. What if someone spotted the device? What if they were discovered? Just as Kale finished recording, alarms blared throughout. The ship. Red lights flashed overhead, bathing the room in an ominous glow. Panic erupted as soldiers scrambled to identify the source of the breach. One officer shouted, "Intruders! Find them!" Kyle cursed under his breath. They've detected us, he whispered urgently. We need to leave, now. But escape wasn't going to be easy. Guards poured into the command center, blocking exits and searching for intruders. Trapped behind the console, Arjun's mind raced. There had to be a way out. Then inspiration struck. Grabbing a loose cable from the floor, he yanked it free, plunging the area into darkness. What are you doing? Kale hissed, grabbing Arjun's arm. Trust me, Arjun replied, pulling him toward the nearest exit. In the confusion, they slipped past distracted guards and darted into the corridor beyond. Behind them, shouts echoed as soldiers tried to restore power and locate the saboteurs. Running flat out, Arjun and Kale weaved through the labyrinthine halls, dodging patrols and avoiding detection. Adrenaline coursed through Arjun's veins, sharpening his senses. Despite the danger, he couldn't help but feel a strange thrill. This was real. It wasn't some story Kale told about distant worlds or battles among the stars. This was happening, now, and he was part of it. Eventually, they reached the docking bay where their shuttle awaited, but as they sprinted toward it, a squad of soldiers appeared, cutting off their path. Cornered, Kale raised his hand slowly, motioning for Arjun to do the same. It's over, he muttered grimly. For a moment, all hope seemed lost. Then, without warning, the bay doors slid open, revealing another ship hovering outside. Bright beams of light shot through the opening, illuminating the soldiers and forcing them to shield their eyes. From the ship, a voice boomed over a loudspeaker. Stand down. You're surrounded by forces of the Galactic Concordance. The soldiers froze, clearly unsure how to respond. Seizing the opportunity, Kale grabbed Arjun and bolted toward the shuttle. As they climbed aboard, the alien ship provided covering, fire, keeping the Dominion troops at bay. Within seconds, they were airborne, speeding away from the enemy vessel. Safe inside the shuttle, Arjun collapsed into his seat, gasping for breath. His hands trembled, and sweat dripped down his face, but a grin spread across his lips. We did it, he said, his voice shaky but triumphant. Kale nodded, equally exhausted but relieved. Yes, we did, he agreed. Now let's get this evidence to the Concordance. As the shuttle merged with the protective formation of Concordance ships, Arjun allowed himself a brief moment to reflect. Just days ago, he had been a boy with nothing, struggling to survive in a forgotten corner of the world. Now he was fighting alongside beings from other galaxies, standing up against forces capable of destroying entire planets. It was surreal, and, yet somehow, it felt exactly where he was meant to be. When they arrived at the Concordance flagship, they were greeted by representatives eager to review the evidence. The leader, the same luminous-skinned being who had spoken to them earlier, examined the recordings carefully. Her expression grew increasingly grave as she watched footage of the Dominion's invasion plans unfold. This is unacceptable, she declared, her voice firm. The Dominion must be stopped. Orders were issued immediately. Fleets mobilized, preparing to intercept and neutralize the rogue force threatening Earth. Meanwhile, Kale and Arjun were escorted to a safe area to rest and recover. For the first time since their journey began, they allowed themselves to relax, if only briefly. That night, as they sat together in a quiet chamber aboard the flagship, Kale turned to Arjun. You were incredible today, he said sincerely. I couldn't have done it without you. Arjun shrugged, embarrassed by the praise. I just did what needed to be done, he replied. No, Kale countered. You went above and beyond. You took risks most adults wouldn't dare take. And because of you, Earth has a fighting chance. A warm feeling spread through Arjun's chest. For years he had felt invisible, insignificant. But now, thanks to Kale, and perhaps fate itself, he realized that even someone with nothing could make a difference. Together, they had faced impossible odds and emerged victorious. And though the battle ahead promised to be fierce, Arjun knew they would face it head-on, as equals, as friends, and as heroes. Outside the ship's windows, the stars twinkled, brightly, their light stretching infinitely across the universe. Somewhere among them lay answers, challenges, and adventures waiting to unfold. Whatever came next, Arjun was ready. The Concordance flagship hummed with activity as preparations for the impending battle reached a fever pitch. Soldiers moved briskly through the corridors, their armor gleaming under artificial lights. Technicians worked tirelessly at control panels, calibrating weapon systems and plotting strategic maneuvers. The air was thick with tension, yet also with purpose, a shared determination to protect Earth from the Dominion's wrath. Amidst all this chaos, Arjun and Kale found themselves in a quiet corner of the ship, catching their breath after delivering the critical evidence that had galvanized the Concordance into action. Kale leaned against a wall, his face pale but resolute. "This is it," he murmured, more to himself than to Arjun. "Once we engage the Dominion, there's no turning back." Arjun nodded, his young eyes reflecting both excitement and apprehension. He had come so far from scavenging scraps in the forest to infiltrating an alien warship, and now he stood on the brink of something monumental. But this wasn't just about him anymore. It was about protecting billions of lives, including those of his family and friends back on Earth. "What happens next?" he asked softly. Kale glanced at him, admiration flickering in his gaze. Despite everything they'd been through, Arjun's courage hadn't faltered. "Now," Kale began, "the Concordance will launch its forces to intercept the Dominion fleet. We've exposed their plans, but stopping them won't be easy. They're ruthless, well-armed, and outnumber us significantly." "But you said the Concordance is stronger, right?" Arjun pressed, searching for reassurance. "They are," Kale confirmed. "But strength alone isn't enough. Battles like these require strategy, precision, and sometimes sacrifices." His voice carried a somber note, hinting at the gravity of what lay ahead. Before either of them could say more, a soft chime echoed through the room. A holographic message appeared before them, projected by one of the Concordance leaders. "Kyle, Arjun," her melodic voice addressed them directly, "your bravery has earned our deepest respect. However, your role in this conflict may not yet be over." Arjun's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" the leader explained calmly. While the Concordance fleet prepared to confront the Dominion, there remained one final task, one only Kale and Arjun could accomplish. Deep within the Dominion flagship, a central control hub housed a device capable of disabling the entire invasion fleet. Destroying it would cripple the Dominion's ability to attack Earth. But reaching it required someone familiar with their technology, someone like Kale, and someone small and agile enough to evade detection, someone like Arjun. "You want us to go back there?" Arjun exclaimed, incredulous. "After everything we just escaped?" "It's dangerous, yes," the leader admitted. "But if successful, it could end this conflict swiftly and save countless lives. You have our full support should you choose to accept." Kyle looked at Arjun, silently asking if he was willing to take the risk. Arjun hesitated, weighing the enormity of the decision. Going back meant facing death once again. Staying behind meant leaving the fate of Earth in others' hands. Finally, he straightened his posture and met Kyle's gaze. "If it means saving my home, I'll do it," he said firmly. Kale smiled faintly, though worry shadowed his features. "Then let's prepare." Hours later, cloaked in stealth suits provided by the Concordance, Kale and Arjun boarded a small reconnaissance craft designed to avoid detection. As they approached the Dominion flagship, Arjun clenched his fists tightly, fighting back nerves. This time, they weren't merely observers or saboteurs. They were soldiers, entrusted with a mission that could turn the tide of war. Upon docking, they slipped into the shadows, moving cautiously through dimly lit corridors. The ship felt even more menacing than before, its metallic walls echoing with the sound of boots marching and orders being barked. Every step closer to the control hub tested their resolve. At one point, they narrowly avoided a patrol by hiding. Inside a maintenance shaft, their breathing shallow as footsteps passed mere inches away. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they reached the entrance to the control hub. Two heavily armed guards stood watch outside, their weapons at the ready. Kyle signaled for Arjun to stay put while he devised a plan. Using a small EMP device disguised as a coin, Kyle disabled the guards' equipment momentarily, causing their helmets to short-circuit. Seizing the opportunity, he knocked them unconscious with swift precision. "Good thing I taught you some self-defense moves," Kyle whispered with a smirk as they dragged the guards out of sight. Inside the control hub, rows of monitors displayed, complex data streams, mapping Earth's continents and cities for invasion routes. In the center of the room loomed the device they sought, a massive, pulsating core encased in translucent shielding. Kyle immediately set to work, connecting his datapad to the system and initiating a shutdown sequence. But as lines of code scrolled across the screen, alarms suddenly blared throughout the ship. "They know we're here," Kyle shouted, frantically, typing faster. "Arjun, guard the door." Arjun obeyed, positioning himself near the entrance with a stolen blaster rifle clutched in trembling hands. Moments later, a group of Dominion soldiers stormed into the room, firing wildly. Arjun ducked, behind cover, returning fire as best he could. Though inexperienced, he relied on instinct and adrenaline, taking down several enemies before they overwhelmed him. "Kyle, hurry!" Arjun yelled, panic creeping into his voice as reinforcements arrived. "I'm almost done," Kyle replied, sweat dripping down his face. With a final keystroke, the core began to destabilize, glowing brighter and emitting a low-pitched whine. "It's going to blow! We need to get out of here, now!" Grabbing Arjun by the arm, Kyle sprinted toward the exit, dodging blasts and debris as explosions rocked the ship. Behind them, the control hub collapsed in a fiery inferno, severing the Dominion fleet's connection to its command structure. Chaos erupted as ships lost coordination, drifting aimlessly in space. Reaching the docking bay, they leapt aboard their reconnaissance craft and launched into the void, just as the flagship exploded in a brilliant burst of light. From afar, they watched as the Concordance fleet engaged the disoriented Dominion forces, systematically dismantling their advantage. As their craft merged with the protective formation of Concordance vessels, Arjun slumped in his seat, utterly drained. His body ached, his mind reeled, but a sense of triumph washed over him. They had done it. They had struck a decisive blow against the enemy. Kyle placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You were incredible, Arjun. Truly brave." Arjun managed, a weak smile. "Does this mean it's over?" "Not quite," Kyle admitted. "There's still cleanup to handle, survivors to account for. But thanks to you, Earth is safe. For now." For the first time since their journey began, Arjun allowed himself to imagine a future beyond survival. Perhaps one day he wouldn't. Just dream of the stars. He'd reach them. And when that day came, he knew he wouldn't face it alone. As the Dominion fleet crumbled under the combined might of the Galactic Concordance, a profound silence fell across the battlefield. The once mighty ships that had threatened Earth now lay in ruins, their wreckage drifting aimlessly through the void. From the safety of the Concordance flagship, Arjun watched as the last remnants of the enemy forces were neutralized. His heart swelled with relief and pride. He had played a part in saving his planet even if no one on Earth would ever know it. Kyle stood beside him, gazing at the stars beyond the viewport. "It's over," he said quietly, though his tone carried a mix of triumph and sorrow. "Earth is safe." Arjun nodded, but his mind raced with questions. What happened next? Would Kale leave him behind to return to his own world? Or was there still a place for him among the stars? Before he could voice these thoughts, the leader of the Concordance approached them, her luminous form radiating calm authority. "You two have accomplished something extraordinary," she began, her voice warm yet commanding. "Not only did you expose the Dominion's plans, but your actions ensured their defeat. Humanity owes you a debt it can never repay." Arjun shifted uncomfortably. He wasn't used to praise, especially from someone so powerful. "We just did what we had to do," he replied humbly. The leader smiled faintly. "Sometimes doing what must be done is the greatest act of bravery." She paused, then turned her attention to Kale. "And you've proven yourself a true ally of the Concordance. Your knowledge, courage, and willingness to sacrifice have earned our deepest respect. Kale bowed his head slightly. I only wish I could have stopped the Dominion sooner. No one blames you, she assured him. You acted honorably, even when faced with impossible odds. Her gaze softened as she looked at Arjun again. As for you, young hero, your name will be remembered among the stars. You've shown that strength isn't measured by size or resources. It's measured by heart. Arjun felt a lump rise in his throat. For years he had lived in obscurity, invisible to the world around him. But now, standing here amidst beings from distant galaxies, he realized how much he had changed. He was no longer just a boy scraping by in a forgotten village. He was someone who had stared down danger and emerged victorious. The leader continued, her expression turning thoughtful. Now comes the question of what lies ahead for both of you. Kyle, your skills and wisdom would make you an invaluable member of the Concordance. We'd welcome you aboard permanently if you choose to stay. Kyle hesitated, glancing at Arjun. Thank you for the offer, he said slowly. But my journey doesn't end here. There's still work to be done, other worlds to protect, other threats to face. And what about me? Arjun asked, unable to hide the tremor in his voice. The leader knelt slightly to meet his eyes directly. Arjun, the choice is yours. You may return to Earth, where life will continue much as it always has. Or you may join us, embarking on adventures far beyond anything you've dreamed of. Both paths are honorable, but they lead to very different futures. For a moment, Arjun didn't speak. His mind wrestled with conflicting desires. On one hand, Earth was home, the place where he had grown up, where every tree, hill, and stream held memories. It was familiar, comforting, even in its hardships. On the other hand, the thought of exploring the universe, learning new things, and making a difference on a galactic scale ignited a fire within him that refused to dim. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Arjun spoke. I want to go back, he said firmly. At least for now. My village needs me. They don't have anyone else. Kale placed a hand on his shoulder, pride shining in his eyes. That's brave of you, Arjun. Staying isn't easy, not when you've seen what's out there. But I won't forget what I've learned, Arjun added quickly, and maybe someday I'll come back when I'm ready. The leader nodded approvingly. Then it shall be so. We'll provide you with supplies and tools to help rebuild your community. And should you ever wish to rejoin us, simply send a signal. The Concordance will always welcome you. A few days later, Arjun found himself aboard a shuttle descending toward Earth. Below him stretched the familiar landscape of rolling hills and winding rivers. As the shuttle touched down near his village, he felt a wave of emotions, relief, nostalgia, and a tinge of sadness. Kyle accompanied him, promising to stay long enough to ensure his safe return. When Arjun stepped out of the shuttle, the villagers gathered around, their faces filled with awe and confusion. None of them understood where he had been or what he had done, nor did they need to. All they saw was the boy who had left weeks ago returning with strange gifts, seeds that grew into nutritious crops overnight, devices that purified water instantly, and medicines capable of curing illnesses that had plagued them for generations. Over time, life in the village improved dramatically. Hunger became less frequent, illnesses dwindled, and hope began to take root. Arjun shared stories of the stars with anyone who would listen, planting seeds of curiosity in young minds. Though he remained grounded in his humble surroundings, his spirit soared, knowing that somewhere out there, Kale and the Concordance continued their mission to protect the universe. True to his word, Kale visited often, bringing news of distant worlds and updates on the Concordance's efforts. Each visit renewed Arjun's determination to contribute, whether by helping his village thrive or preparing for the day he might venture beyond Earth once again. Years passed, and tales of Arjun's bravery spread far and wide. To some, they sounded like legends, stories too fantastical to believe. But to those who knew him, they were proof that even the smallest among us could change the course of history. One evening, as Arjun sat outside his shack watching the stars, a soft hum filled the air. A familiar shuttle descended from the sky, its lights casting a gentle glow over the fields. Kyle stepped out, smiling warmly. "Ready for another adventure?" he asked. This time Arjun didn't hesitate. With a grin, he climbed aboard, leaving behind the world he loved but carrying its lessons with him. Together they soared upward, breaking through Earth's atmosphere and into the vast unknown. As the stars stretched endlessly before them, Arjun realized he wasn't just a boy anymore. He was a guardian of humanity, a friend to aliens, and a traveler among the cosmos. And though challenges awaited, he faced them with unwavering resolve, for he knew that courage, kindness, and curiosity could overcome even the darkest of threats. In the end, it wasn't wealth or power that defined greatness. It was the choices we made and the lives we touched along the way. And in that truth, Arjun found his destiny.